Right now on Currents News, dangerous trip. Pope Francis is still heading to Iraq despite a missile attack against U.S. troops.
I now understand that I acted in a way that made people feel uncomfortable.
Speaking out, Governor Cuomo publicly addresses the sexual harassment allegations against him, saying he will not resign. New leader will introduce you to the Catholic woman who was named CEO of Elmhurst Hospital. And on your mark, how the pandemic is affecting people with disabilities. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. A U.S. military contractor is dead, killed during a rocket strike on a military base. But the violence is not stopping Pope Francis from making the first papal trip to Iraq.
Dopodomani, Dio volente, mi recherò in Iraq per un pellegrinaggio di 3 giorni.
Pope Francis refusing to cancel his plans to go to Iraq, even after 10 missiles slammed into an airbase that houses U.S. coalition and Iraqi forces.
Pater noster, qui es in cielo.
At the end of Wednesday's general audience, the Pope said he won't let the Iraqi people down.
Il popolo iracheno ci aspetta. Aspettava San Giovanni Paolo II, al quale è stato vietato di andare. Non si può deludere un popolo per la seconda volta. Preghiamo perché questo viaggio si possa fare bene.
Iraqi security has located the rocket launcher that was used in the deadly attack. The airbase is about 100 miles northwest of Baghdad, the place where the Pope is set to begin his visit on Friday. The rocket attack comes nearly 2 months after a rare twin bombing in Baghdad back in January that killed at least 32 people. The Holy Father is hoping to bring peace to the region and also hope to Iraq's Christian minority, which has been devastated by ISIS.
Da tempo desidero incontrare quel popolo che ha tanto sofferto, incontrare quella Chiesa martire. Nella terra di Abramo, insieme con gli altri leader religiosi, faremo anche un altro passo avanti nella fratellanza tra I credenti.
An investigation is underway to see who is responsible for the attack. About 10,000 security forces will be deployed to protect Francis, who won't be traveling in his beloved Pope-mobile this trip, but will likely have to make his way through Iraq in armored vehicles. The Holy Father will have plenty on his schedule when he touches down for the first papal visit to the country. He'll visit 6 cities in 3 days and plans to sit down with top Shia religious leader Grand Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani. There are other worries, too, not only about security, but also the potential for super spreader events as Iraq is struggling to deal with rising COVID cases. Currents News and The Tablet will have all-inclusive coverage of the Pope's trip to Iraq beginning this Friday. Now to tonight's other big story. New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo addressed the public for the first time since 3 different sexual harassment allegations against him surfaced. The governor saying he is embarrassed by the accusations, but plans to stay in office. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has more.
I wasn't elected by politicians. I was elected by the people of the state of New York. I'm not going to resign.
After a tumultuous 2 weeks, Governor Cuomo finally faced New Yorkers, and he says he's not throwing in the towel. The governor's first press conference since being accused of sexual harassment by 3 women started off with COVID business as usual, until he admitted he acted inappropriately in the past.
I acted in a way that made people feel uncomfortable. It was unintentional. And I truly and deeply apologize for it.
The governor apologizing repeatedly Wednesday, but denies ever touching anyone in an improper way.
I never touched anyone inappropriately.
Lawmakers from across the aisle have called for Governor Cuomo to step down amid this latest scandal. Remember, he's also under fire for undercounting nursing home deaths in the state. Cuomo is being investigated by the Attorney General's office.
The Attorney General is allowed to do her work. We've asked her to come in. Everyone's going to fully comply with that.
But the governor won't comply with a different set of requests from legislators who want him stripped of his pandemic emergency powers. Initially, they were set to expire on April 30th. But Governor Cuomo said his ability to suspend, modify, and create laws by issuing executive orders isn't going anywhere.
The legislation extends the emergency power to the point where the federal government declares an end to the pandemic.
The governor is currently pushing forward with his coronavirus plans, encouraging people to get the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which he called, quote, much easier than Pfizer or Moderna. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
We just heard the governor say he will not resign, but should he be forced to step down, who would be next in line to step in? That likely candidate would be Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul, who would actually be the first woman to take over the office. Hochul is a Buffalo area native and got her law degree from Catholic University in Washington. Though Hochul is a Democrat, she is known for reaching across the aisle. She's a supporter of the pro-choice agenda and once garnered attention for opposing a plan to grant driver's licenses to undocumented immigrants. Cuomo says the Johnson & Johnson vaccine has reached New York, but Catholic bishops are urging people not to get that one if given a choice. They cite the use of aborted fetal cells, releasing a statement saying if one can choose among equally safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines, the vaccine with the least connection to abortion-derived cell lines should be chosen. Therefore, if one has the ability to choose a vaccine, Pfizer or Moderna's vaccines should be chosen over Johnson & Johnson's. Echoing those sentiments, John Brahaney with the National Catholic Bioethics Center says it is still morally responsible to get vaccinated.
Immunization can be a very good thing for ourselves and for the common good, and we need to work for alternatives.
According to the Vatican, both the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are ethically uncontroversial. 1 year ago this month, Elmhurst Hospital in Queens became the so-called epicenter of the epicenter, ground zero of the coronavirus crisis. The center was flooded with patients, and at one time, 13 infected people died in just 24 hours. But today, there's hope at the hospital. Elmhurst has a new CEO, and Emily Druby tells us her faith will lead the hospital to better days.
Last March, Elmhurst faced apocalyptic conditions. Overwhelmed by COVID patients pouring in, stretchers filled the hallways as fear filled the air. Some days, more people died than they had room for in the morgue. A year later, and a new leader has been tapped to help the hospital learn from its past and grow. A local Catholic woman, Helen Arteaga Landaverde. She has firsthand experience. She was a COVID patient here.
I feel like God had a plan. God was like, you're going to go through these dark days, Helen, but at the end, it's going to help you in such a way that you're going to take this hospital and this community to a new future.
Now she's got plans for the hospital, requesting $30 million for upgrades and repairs so far.
I have so many dreams for this hospital. One of them is to improve our technology, improve our equipment, get more providers to come here.
Helen tells us as she starts to work on these big changes, she'll be relying heavily on her faith.
Every step where I have felt like, oh, I don't think I can take a step more, or I don't have the strength, my faith has come in and said, yes, you can.
She's a longtime parishioner of Our Lady of Sorrows in Corona, Queens. She went to their Catholic academy.
Faith has always been a defining value in her, both her family and her story.
The church's pastor, Father Manuel de Jesus Rodriguez, describes Helen as a pillar of the church and the community. Recently, they congratulated and thanked her publicly. Helen's drive to help others came from tragedy, the loss of her father in 1998.
I would hear his voice over and over again. He was like, Helen, you can't fix the world, but you can fix this one block.
So she opened Plaza del Sol, a community healthcare center that helps everyone, whether they can afford it or not.
That clinic is a life-saving angel here in Corona.
Now she's ready for her next step, continuing to make her father proud and help others.
Plaza del Sol helped me fix that block, and then Elmhurst Hospital is my next block.
Helen says she's excited to continue the fight to make sure everyone, no matter their race, their immigration status, or their net worth, has good health care. In Corona, Queens, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The hospital is still seeing about 10 to 20 patients a day that are presenting COVID symptoms, but most can be evaluated and sent home. Right now, the hospital is focusing on vaccinations. This was the first shots given out at the medical center back in December. Since then, there have been thousands of shots in the arm and counting. One group is working to help those with disabilities during the pandemic. Coming up, we'll introduce you to members of the nonprofit On Your Mark and the people they work with. Plus, the coronavirus is hitting Iraq very hard as the Pope gets ready for his trip there. And we'll speak with a member of the Jesuit Refugee Service in Iraq and find out what the Holy Father's visit means to him. Bringing it back to our top story, you're looking at a launcher used to fire rockets on an Iraqi base housing American troops. A civilian contractor from the U.S. was killed in the attack. Despite the threat, the Pope is still moving forward with his trip to the country. And the people there are anxiously awaiting the Holy Father's visit. Father Joseph Cassar, Country Director of Jesuit Refugee Service, is in Erbil now. He joins us. Father, so what's the mood like where you are after this latest attack?
I'm in Erbil, which is several hundred miles away from where the attack happened. The attack happened on the Ain al-Assad air base in Iraq's western province of Anbar. And this airbase hosts U.S. coalition and Iraqi troops. It's very unfortunate that another rocket attack has taken place and that it should have resulted in loss of life. I would say people are not surprised. Unfortunately, people have been accustomed to decades of violence in Iraq. So yet another rocket attack does not really make huge headlines, although it always makes people nervous.
Sure.
Precisely because this latest attack is happening so close to the visit of the Pope. But on the other hand, there has been an increase in such attacks over the past year. So as such, it is not very surprising. The question is, who will have the courage to put an end to the cycle of violence?
Absolutely. You know, Pope Francis has thanked the Christians of Iraq for their sacrifice and mercy throughout this ongoing crisis. Let's listen to what he said when all of this first started.
Siete nel cuore della Chiesa. La Chiesa soffre con voi e la Chiesa è fiera di voi.
So what is the latest on the churches there? How is the rebuilding process going?
The rebuilding of churches, you know, of the physical buildings is one thing. I suppose what needs to happen at the same time is rebuilding the church in terms of community, because for many reasons people are tired. People feel that the community has been dwindling ever since the U.S.-British invasion in 2003, and therefore, you know, numbers are smaller. Strength is not really in numbers, but strength is in the ability to give testimony to the gospel. And I suppose that if the visit of Pope Francis will enable Christians to become ever more aware of the mission that we are entrusted with in this country, I suppose that will go a long way to rebuild the church, even more than the churches.
I'm sure. And the Pope's safety is a concern also when it comes to the coronavirus. How's it going there now? Are there still strict restrictions in place?
There are restrictions, and some new restrictive measures have been announced, both in government of Iraq territory as well as in the Kurdistan region where I'm based. We take a lot of precautions. If I weren't talking to you and if I weren't on camera, I would be wearing a mask in our office, which I do every day wherever I go, whether I'm inside or out. So we have been taking very strict precautions ever since the pandemic started among our colleagues, in our office, in all our projects and everything. Infection numbers, rates have increased over the past couple of weeks, but I suppose there is greater awareness, especially because of this latest round of restrictions, greater awareness by people to be more attentive and proactive.
All right, Father Joseph Cassar, Country Director, Jesuit Refugee Service. Stay safe and be well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Taking a look now at Iraq's COVID-19 numbers ahead of the Pope's trip, the World Health Organization is reporting a spike of cases since the start of the new year. As of Wednesday, Iraq has just over 700,000 confirmed cases of the coronavirus, with 4,600 new cases being reported. Overall, the country has over 13,000 confirmed COVID-related deaths. One nonprofit is making sure people with disabilities are able to find help and support during the pandemic. Jessica Easthope was on Staten Island with their story.
Once a week, Billy and Colleen go for a counseling walk.
Come on, let's go. How has your week been so far, Bill?
It's been okay. It's been snowing a lot.
A lot?
These days, they talk a lot about the pandemic.
It's difficult because I cannot even go back to the bowling alley.
And we'll be free from it?
The ongoing health crisis has uniquely affected people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. At On Your Mark, a nonprofit serving adults in that community, the days are built around routines that keep life enjoyable and stable, but they were quickly abandoned.
And we're seeing a lot of increased anxiety, increased depression, increased isolation, especially because of the weather. To the residents.
With an end to the pandemic in sight, behavioral health coordinator Colleen McKeever has kept moving toward the finish line.
And we just think, let's advocate for them and let's make their day good. And when I see the guys, and then they make me feel better.
And the rest of the staff at On Your Mark has had to stay optimistic.
Definitely got off on the right foot.
Even when there were massive cuts to crucial funding and its businesses closed.
We have to find ways to make cuts in other services to be able to keep the lights on and pay the mortgage and keep our staff working.
Luckily, with the help of private donations and virtual fundraising, On Your Mark is keeping its pace for now. But the threat of COVID-19 continued to creep up.
Yes.
Billy was one of the nearly 50 residents who contracted the virus.
I was feeling sick. It's no fun because I cannot even leave my room.
The city's vaccine rollout has seen eligible New Yorkers waiting for hours only to be turned away. For some, getting an appointment has proved near impossible.
Not that anybody wants to stand on a line for 4 hours, but we can't.
When it comes to keeping its residents safe, On Your Mark took a shot at doing things on its own, vaccinating almost all of its residents and finding ways to jump other hurdles.
Some doctors won't see our individuals because they won't wear a mask, so we've had to switch doctors, find alternatives to masks. We kind of never take no for an answer here.
Lives have upended, but Billy has so much to look forward to.
I really want to go to Applebee's for my daddy's 6th birthday.
Bundle up, man.
The pandemic has done everything to hold this community back, but On Your Mark is giving them a head start.
Have a good time, bud,
On
right?
Staten Island, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
We are celebrating the Catholic press. Coming up in this edition of Into the Deep, we will speak with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio about news for the faithful and how the Pope helped Iraq long before his visit with this Lamborghini. Pope Francis has been helping Christians in Iraq long before planning to visit the country. Back in 2017, Pope Francis was gifted this Lamborghini. He blessed, signed, and then auctioned it off for charity. A quarter of the $950,000 raised went to the papal charity Aid to the Church in Need, which was then used to help Christians in Iraq. According to one of the organization's directors, the money was specifically used in rebuilding a Syrian nursery and a multi-purpose room for a Catholic church. And just a reminder, Currents News and the tablet will have all-inclusive coverage of the Pope's trip to Iraq beginning this Friday. Besides our coverage, Net TV will be airing various parts of the Pope's trip in full. That also begins on Friday. You can catch your first glimpses of the Holy Father in Iraq right after Currents News that night. Net TV will show the Pope's meeting with local bishops and priests. The Bishop of Brooklyn, Nicholas DiMarzio, is a big advocate for a Catholic press and putting your faith in the news. In honor of February's Catholic Press Month, he's sitting down with former tablet editor Ed Wilkinson to talk about the importance of spreading the good news in this edition of Into the Deep. Ed.
Thank you. We welcome Bishop DIMARZIO. Thanks for being with us again today. Bishop, we like to celebrate February as Catholic Press Month. We like to give a little bit, not a toss of the hat to the Catholic press. A lot of people don't read newspapers anymore, but in this diocese, we are keeping the Catholic press alive with the tablet. What is the significance? Well, what contributions do you think the printed word still can make in our society, Bishop?
Well, the printed word has a lot of force. You know, the sword is not mightier than the pen, they hear. And I think in our Catholic press, we do try to find always the truth, to enunciate it clearly for the benefit of those who read it, and those who listen and hear it. That's part of our commitment.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be such a divergence in the media these days between liberal and conservative, and you're wondering who your audience is. When you look at a Catholic newspaper, who should be the audience for the Catholic newspaper? I mean, it should be liberal? Should it be conservative? How do you look at that?
Well, I think it should be neutral, because the truth doesn't have a slant. The truth is the truth. Just enunciate the truth as best we can explain it and understand it, and then people can whatever inclination they have, or whatever the way they see things politically. But you know, news is not supposed to be political. It's supposed to be. It's not propaganda. It's just stating the facts and the truth as it is.
Yeah, of course, in our diocese, you helped us form the DESYLES Media Group. What was the purpose of DESYLES Media?
Well, it was to strengthen what we were doing. In fact, by strengthening, bringing the newspaper, the tablet, together with the prayer channel, this made it a much better news outlet, something I'm very proud of. I'm glad that I had the idea to do that, and we're happy that it's functioning today.
Yeah. I think the TV station really showed its the contribution that it could make during this pandemic, when we were able to bring the liturgies to people even when they weren't able to go to church. So that was really a time for us to shine, wasn't it?
It was. We were transmitting masses every day in 8 languages, so that gave the major language groups of the diocese an opportunity to assist at Mass on TV, make spiritual communion. How important that was at that time, and it's still continuing to some degree. And we will continue that. We recognize that the great number of viewers that we had at that time, so that we know people know we're there, and when they want something religious, they know where to find it.
Okay, Bishop, thanks so much, and thank you for your support of the tablet and DESYLES Media.
Okay, you're welcome.
Good. Now we're throwing it back to our news desk.
Thank you, Ed and Bishop DIMARZIO. And that is Current News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.